This is going to be a fun day. Today we are going to create the papers that will make our basket for our still life. Now remember, the first thing you do with any piece of paper is put your first name, your last name, and your art room code, which is 2A, B, or C. Then you're going to flip your paper over, and notice my paper is horizontal. That's back and forth this way, horizontal. I'm going to hold it horizontal. And the first paper that I'm going to create is paper that will be used for my basket. So my basket is going to be brown. I'm going to dip my paintbrush into the brown. Notice I'm using the Papa Bear paintbrush. That's the big one. And I'm going to paint this entire paper brown. Remember, when you are using the same color each time, you do not have to wash that paintbrush off. So I can dip right in there. You may also notice I'm getting some paint on the table. No problem. We will just get that at the end. And I am going to paint this whole paper brown. And then I can't wait to see to show you the next part, how we're going to create texture of our basket. Now, if you remember, texture is one of the elements of art. That's a tool that artists use to create art, and texture is how something feels or how something looks like it feels. And so we are going to create some great texture for our baskets. You might notice I now have painted my entire paper brown. I'm going to set my paintbrush aside. At the supply table, I have this whole bin of different scraping tools. I love these. You're going to select one. You're just going to need one for today. You might also notice there are combs in here. Combs work just as well too. And I'd like you to start up at the top of your paper. You're going to hold your paper and you're going to scrape to the side. Look at this. How cool. I love using these scraping tools. Notice I've scraped across, making these really cool strips. I think that's going to be a really neat basket. Now you'll notice your scraper did get some paint on it. We'll need to wash that off at the sink. You are going to go ahead and carry very carefully with two hands your paper to the drying rack. Once you've done that, what we're going to do next is clean our paintbrush off. Remember, you've got a cup of water that's filled to that black line. I also really want to remind you to be careful when you are washing those brushes off. We have had some spilled cups of water. I think one reason is because you're kind of getting a little too crazy when you're washing those brushes. So one suggestion I have is you can hold on to the edge of that cup while you're cleaning. Also, just be careful. Remember, my paintbrush needs to be clean and dry before dipping into another paint. Now, once your basket paper is painted, I'm going to have you get another one. Remember, the first thing I do, write my first name, last name into A, B, or C. I'm going to turn this over. I got a little brown paint on there. You may want to go ahead and wipe up that brown paint before starting on another color. It's up to you. Then that won't happen. Now the next paper I want you to experiment with. This is so much fun. What I'm going to do is I want to think about the colors of the fruit that I want to put into my basket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab some red on here. I, in my head, am thinking about apples. I'm going to dab some red. Notice I'm just doing it on this half of my paper. Now I'm going to dip into another color, so I need to wash my paintbrush out and dry it before I go to a new color. If your paper towel gets all yucky, throw it away and get a new one. I'm going to put some orange paint in here. I'm just dabbing it on. Okay, I'm going to wash this paintbrush out. You might notice that my water is getting very red. If your water gets too dirty, at any time you can go over to the sink and get new water. The last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of yellow in here. Then I'm going to set my paintbrush aside and watch this. I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to fold it in half. Oh, this is fun. And then once I've folded it, I'm going to kind of smush this paper together and rub it. Give it a little back rub, I always say. And then I can't wait to see what it's going to look like when I open it up. Oh, awesome. Very cool. Now notice I've got some white in here. If I want to add a little bit more paint, I can fold it back over and do that. But I think what I'll do is just kind of cut my apples out of this. I'm going to carry this over to the drying rack. I'm going to get another piece of paper. I want to think about some other fruits or vegetables that I would like to create for my still life basket. What's the first thing I do? First name, last name, and 2 A, B, or C. I'm going to turn this paper over. And this time I think I'm going to be experimenting a little bit more with how I do my paintbrush strokes. I'm going to stroke my paint this way, then I'm going to stroke my paint that way, and I'm actually going to see if I can blend some colors right on my paper. Today is a great day for experimenting with colors. Now, let me warn you, if you use colors that are across from each other on the color wheel, so let's say if I look on the color wheel, I'll see that yellow is across from purple. If I put yellow and purple in here, it's just going to make a yucky brown mess. So you really want to watch to make sure you're putting colors that are next to each other on the color wheel and not across from each other. Now, I've now dabbed some yellow, I've dabbed some green. I think I'm going to go over to the supply table and get a paint scraper. This time I'm using a comb. Oh, look at this. And I'm going to pull that across. Ah, neat. My paper and experiment with this comb and see what kind of cool things I can come up with. Wow, that's neat. When I finish this, you're going to carry this over to the drying rack. This would make a great pear, wouldn't it? Can you see me cutting out a pear there? Take this over to the drying rack and I'll get another. Now, today, your job is to make sure you have a paper for our basket. You're definitely going to need this. And then, however many fruit and vegetable papers you get finished, that's great. But when it's time to clean up, it's time to clean up. So I'm going to let you go ahead and enjoy creating your basket paper and fruit and vegetable papers.